So it has been a little while since I last showed my Assetto Corsa modpack on my main channel. And in the last month, I kept tweaking and adding things and changing things to the game. And I figured I'd just make a small little update video on where my current Assetto Corsa install is at. In the video description, you can still find the document and mod list, and everything that I talk about here and everything that I showed will be in there and linked, so you can just kind of like put all that stuff in there as well. But yeah, let's just get right into it. So the first thing to note, which if you compare to the build from before, is a graphics upgrade. So in the previous version of the build, I was using an older version of the Sky plugin, mainly because I liked the look better. It was technically a little bit further behind, but I have now upgraded to the newer Sky plugin. But I did adjust the visuals myself so that it still has this kind of like, so that it still has this more natural look, but it just pops a little bit more. Like the original Sky filter without any adjustments looked just a little bit drab to me. So I did make some adjustments myself. You can find those in the mod list as well that I linked below. And I gotta say, it looks a lot better. Now, if you don't remember what the previous graphics looked like, I can just kind of switch it back here. And yeah. It almost looks broken to me now in hindsight, and I could swear that it kinda maybe is. Like, I don't think the reflections on the car were this bad. I'm not sure, but I looked back at my old video on the main channel from a month ago, and at times the reflections definitely on the car were a bit broken. They actually did look like this at times, so this is like pretty much the most easily identifiable upgrade. It's just how much better the cars look. Like, they look so much more like in the scene, for lack of a better word, honestly, which I think is great. I do also think I toned down the environments a little bit. Everything feels a little bit more brighter than before, which makes sense if you're like in the middle of the day. I think at times it can be maybe a little bit too much, but I generally just kind of prefer the way this looks. It does remind me like a little bit of GT7. If I would describe it as a bit of a desaturated GT7, like slightly desaturated GT7. I did try to kind of like increase the saturation a little bit more, but I did realize that there are already kind of issues with it if I do increase it even more, especially on like the car's lights. For example, I think they are a little bit too saturated, like all the details just kind of like blend together. It's like the one thing that I don't think was like an improvement. It's just some of the car details on the lights just kind of blend a bit more together, but for the most part I really dig how the game looks now. I think it's like generally speaking, a bit of a step forward, especially if we look at different times of day and different times of weather. So this is just like, yeah, I guess like slightly cloudy day during the, you know, in the middle of the day. But one big problem with the previous post-processing plugin was how the nighttime looked. It just was way too dark. I'm just gonna like switch back to the old one for now. And so when I kind of like make it darker, you could see that it just never really looked that great. Like, given that we are currently on a racetrack, it's just way too dark. Like, you can't really see stuff in the distance either. There's not really any night sky. For all intents and purposes, it looks fine, but it doesn't look amazing. Now with the new filter, it just receives a massive glow up. So first of all, like, I think all the lights on the car just kind of like reflect much better. Like the lights just kind of like bounce off the car so much nicer. And you can actually see stuff, which is great. Like, for example, look at the billboards over there. Before, I don't think they were even like that visible. Yeah, they're just kind of like dark, and it just kind of feels like most of the lights on the track don't actually work. In fact, I'm convinced that on some tracks they actually didn't work. On official tracks, the nighttime just looks much nicer now, I would say. Also, what I think is quite nice is you have a night sky now. I try to keep it like a little bit like, still very visible and nicely lit, like very visible, but also not like too intense. But yeah, you have like a starry night sky now. You can still make out some clouds. If it's not like super cloudy. This does actually change. Like, if you change the weather to like, let's say for example like overcast, you will see that yeah, the clouds obviously disappear. So yeah, I think nighttime is a big upgrade. I would say in general. It's not perfect. I think there is some stuff that bothers me a little bit. Like, I think for example the rear lights are a little bit too blinding, and also you can't really see a difference in the lights, in the rear lights as well when I brake. It's kind of like probably has something to do with the bloom and saturation. I don't know. I had a hard time trying to dial all of this in. But switching back to daytime, holy flashbang. Oh yeah, also like sunsets look a lot better now. Not sure if I have like a good time of day here that I can show this off. Sunsets also look much nicer. Feels like there's much more color coming from them now, which is kind of nice. So this is how it looks now. And this is how it looked before. Not bad by any means, but now it just looks a whole lot better. Now when it comes to different weathers, it kind of depends. I think different weathers mainly look different now, not necessarily better. So let's say for example we enable, actually let's go for like full on heavy rain. Let's also just kind of like turn the time back to like daytime. I definitely think it looks really good. The thing is, before, it's hard to say, like before it had a certain look to it. It was just kind of like regular overcast weather, but with added rain. Now rain actually has its own like distinct atmosphere. Like everything is just kind of like more gray, a little bit more desaturated, which you may or may not like. I think it's nice that it has kind of like its own vibe now. It definitely feels a lot more rainy, for lack of a better word. But yeah, it's more of a side grade, I would say. It's more different than better, I would say. The one thing where I'm just kind of like now is with fog. So fog now looks quite realistic, I would say. This is actually just kind of like how fog looks in real life. Maybe stuff in the distance would be a little bit less visible. The thing is, before, it just kind of had its own vibe, you know? So this is once again like the previous plugin. It had its own kind of like distinct atmosphere. It was a lot darker and a lot more like bluish, which in some way I kind of preferred. You can also like just kind of see the fog on the road a little bit better. Like the new version is not bad per se. I just like the look of it less. It just kind of looks a little bit bland. I'm not sure. I think it looked better before, but I think overall it is an improvement. I do like the new sky plugin a lot better. It does make the cars look much better, that is for sure, with all the added reflections. And 9 times out of 10 it will look better, especially during the night. And especially because I only showed like one track. Like I think some of the street tracks in particular now look way better at night as well. So yeah, definitely a big improvement there. Quite happy how it looks. It took a while to dial in, but yeah, I got there in the end, even if it isn't perfect. But moving on to something completely different, and for this I actually have to show you like, you know, a screenshot or like, you know, a still from my previous video. So this is how the car dealer looked like before. And one thing that in hindsight definitely kind of bothered me is how all of the car previews look different. Like they don't have this like uniform look to it, like how you would have it in like a Gran Turismo or Forza, where all the car thumbnails here and previews are kind of taken from the same angle with the same background. So you can see that, you know, like the first 3 Hondas here look mostly the same. Then the Civic has this weird gray, light gray background and it's taken from a different angle. Then down here you have the Civic that looks different. Then this Civic that looks different. Like they all just kind of have different previews. And I didn't know actually that you could change these yourself, for the most part automatically. So you can basically download or kind of make your own style of preview thumbnail, which I actually ended up doing. And if we now go into the car dealer, let's actually go to Honda, you'll see that all of the cars here, except this broken one, I'm not sure what's going on there, but they all have the same kind of like style thumbnail. Like this looks so much nicer. I also just vastly prefer how this looks. I think it's kind of like leaning towards the Gran Turismo 6 style of like preview thumbnails. And yeah, it works with all colors as well. I think there's only like a few cars where like 3 or 2 cars where I wasn't able to like properly change it. But this is so much nicer if they all just kind of like look uniform. Especially I think the black background really makes these blend together nicely. Like if you look a little bit closely, if your monitor allows for it, you can see that it's not exactly the same color, but it just kind of blends together a lot more nicely. And I'm quite a big fan of, you know, just how the car dealer looks these days. Same extends to the used car dealer, obviously. And yeah, it's just like such a small thing. Okay, some cars are maybe still a little bit big. Some cars I might still have to fix by hand. Some of the trucks are a little bit too massive and they don't actually quite fit in the thumbnail. It's pretty funny. But yeah, it's such a small thing. It just kind of... These kinds of things like really make you appreciate all of the small stuff in like the actual like proper AAA racing games, like in the Gran Turismos and Forzas. like these car thumbnails that you don't really ever think about all that much, but now that you just kind of had to fix this stuff yourself and make it look good yourself, I definitely like gained a newfound appreciation for it, and yeah, I do think it looks great now. I do like that all the cars are kind of like presented in a uniform way, so to say. Makes a big difference. And since I was already showing off a bunch of cars, obviously you might want to know if I added any new ones. And the truth is not that many, because like we're currently sitting at 1,210 cars. By all means, that is actually more than enough. I think at this point I added mostly everything that I wanted. I could now at this point start adding like super quirky cars that you might not actually be able to drive in other racing games. But I think at that point there's just like no end to it. Like this is such an absurd car list at this point. I find it hard to just kind of find any interest in adding new stuff at this point. However, there is some stuff that I was able to find. So for example, just recently, someone uploaded a Fiat, where is it? Oh, it's already here. A Fiat Barchetta, which, you know, I do like these kind of like quirky European, I don't want to call this a shitbox, but I guess shitbox is kind of fitting a little bit. So yeah, that one's definitely new. I did add an M3 CSL. There are already like a good handful of M3s in the game, and especially with BMWs, I think there's way too many already in here at this point. But I don't know, something about the CSL I always found really interesting. It's a really unique and weird car. I think it's also quite rare. So even though I already have like plenty of E46s, I think adding the CSL was a nice idea. I also found this really peculiar Nissan Skyline. This is a 25 GT Turbo, which I gotta be honest, I've never heard of. But I do like these kind of like lower, cheaper spec versions of the GTRs. I think you can also find plenty of these in the Gran Turismo games. And I think they always add like a lot of interesting style to the car list. Just like a little bit, I don't know, I just like these like really quirky like sports cars. There are definitely a bunch of cars as well that I can't believe I missed out on installing ahead of some time, like when I made my video. One of which is like the Toyota Crown, which is, I mean, it's like the car in Japan, I guess. I think taxis use this one as well over there. As well as the Mitsubishi Starion, which I gotta be honest, I quite like, and it's a bit of a shame we don't see this car more often in racing games. But yeah, I did miss out on installing this one previously, and I'm definitely glad to have it in. I did find this Auto Bianchi A112 Abarth Turbo, which I kind of wanted the regular version that you also can find in Gran Turismo 4. This was the only one I could find, but hey, I'll take a juiced up version of this car with 225 brake horsepower. I'll take it. And since I can never have enough shitboxes, I also found a Daihatsu Storia that was uploaded recently. I definitely remember this one from plenty of Gran Turismo games. And this one even has a rally version. I'm not sure if this one actually pops up in the daily rally races, I'm not sure. But it's nice to have. However, by far the coolest thing that I added recently, and I didn't actually know this was a thing until someone pointed this out to me, is, and I kid you not, bikes. So there are, as far as I could find, 3 bike mods in the game at the moment. This is one of them, the BMW S1000RR. I gotta be honest, I'm not a bike guy whatsoever. I don't know anything about them. However, the prospect of having bikes in Assetto Corsa alongside with all the other content is really, really cool. I also found a Yamaha YZF R1. This might actually be the only Yamaha vehicle in the game at the moment. As well as a Suzuki GSX-R 750. And you know what? Let's take this one for a spin. And obviously, what better place could there be to drive a bike than the Isle of Man? Oh my god, okay. So this is one of the handful of new tracks that I added. I'm gonna show those off later as well. And I kind of regret adding it, I'm gonna be honest, because this track is insanely massive. So if this track appears in, like, let's say, for example, the Rogue mode, you're locked in. You're locked in for like an hour of racing. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep this one here, but I think for showing off the bike, I think this is really cool. So talking about the bike, it is weird. It is very, very weird, but I'm surprised how well it works. So the first thing you can probably already see, and this is probably like the weirdest thing about it, it's just the lack of animations on the driver. So the driver is just kind of like planted on the bike and does not move. Like, he does not move, he does not lean into corners, which obviously that is not at all how you would ride a bike, and it looks super, super weird. Also, the first person mode looks nice when you're going straight, but as soon as you try to turn, it doesn't quite work. However, I will say, handling-wise, this is fairly interesting. So I haven't played that many bike racing games, to be fair. I think the one that I played the most was probably Tourist Trophy, which, as far as I understood, was actually pretty authentic to bike riding. It's not like super, super realistic, but it was kind of decent. It came kind of close as far as I understand. So this one, I would say, definitely feels more arcadey. Like, you can just kind of like swing the bike around with no major issues. There isn't really like momentum, it feels like. By all accounts, it definitely still feels more like a car, right? Like, as you would expect, since, you know, the game was obviously never built for bikes whatsoever. So the bikes here will definitely feel more like very lightweight cars, I will say. But I don't know, there's just something about this that still feels quite good. I'm not sure if it's the sound of the bike, which I gotta say definitely does sound pretty nice. But even then, like, even with all of the weirdness that comes with it, I still think this is really cool. And the prospect of having maybe full-on bike races in Assetto Corsa, or maybe something more like Drive Club or Project Gotham Racing, where you can have bikes and cars in the same race, maybe even on street circuits, is honestly super sick. And it's like just one more thing that, you know, old racing games used to have, that we could now experience in Assetto Corsa, which I think is super, super rad. So, yeah, bike is definitely a weird addition, but I'm glad they exist, and I'm not sure if they can still be improved in any way, but I definitely dig it, that's for sure. Other than that, there are a few minor improvements as well. So for example, as you probably already noticed, there is a racing line on the track now. And it's nice. It's nice to have for sure. But as you would expect, it's doing its best to give you like some like accurate information on how you will need to drive. But it is definitely not super reliable. So it definitely does get braking points wrong, especially if you're going faster. On slower cars and slower tracks, I think it is fine. But yeah, it's definitely more of a visual thing. I'm not sure if I'm even gonna like keep it around. It definitely feels a little bit too inaccurate to actually be usable. Generally speaking, I do enjoy, I do like having a racing line in these racing games, because you're hopping from so many cars and so many tracks to all kinds of like other stuff. And it just kind of like helps you learn these tracks and cars a little bit better and just kind of anticipate. And generally speaking, I think a racing line is just free information. Like, there's like a lot of people that just claim like, oh yeah, you're gonna drive worse with a racing line on. You have to turn the racing line off, otherwise you're gonna always suck. Which I gotta be honest, I never understood. I always drove better with a racing line enabled, because it's just free information. Like, sure, it might not always get the braking points perfectly right, but it at least gives you like an idea, right? So I usually never really saw any reason to turn it off. The reason why I have it here, even though it is kind of bad, if I'm gonna be honest, is because, once again, it just kind of like adds one more thing that you see in modern racing games, or just generally like full-on AAA racing games, that we can now also have in Assetto Corsa, which I think is super, super sick. It makes the game just feel a little bit more official, so to say, which is kind of like why I added it. Another small thing as well, actually it's like kind of like two small things, is improvements to the pause menu. So now when you pause, you'll see that the camera just kind of like shows you like a cool angle of the car from the front. You can actually adjust this, like you can kind of move the camera around the car, and you can also like you know, change the zoom levels if you want to do something else with it. I think by default it was kind of look at like this, which I think is also cool. But I like to have like the front of the car here, so I can kind of see what the car looks like from when I paused. As well as apps now being able to be adjusted with pause menu. Like, this is something that kind of bothered me before. So if there was something about the HUD that I wanted to change, for example, or certain settings that I added with a mod, like for example the tire sounds or the music, I always had to do it while the game was running, like while I was just kind of like doing stuff. now I can actually adjust stuff in the pause menu as well, which is such a blessing, and I definitely should have enabled sooner. Definitely like just small quality of life improvements all across the board that I think really add up to making this a little bit more better. Man, this game looks damn good now with the new graphics. I just gotta keep glazing it. I'm gonna show off how it looks before again. But yeah, especially like as at nighttime looks so much better. This is what it looked like before. Once again, not bad. Dude, the new graphics just make nighttime pop so much more. It never ceases to amaze me just how much you can get out of Assetto Corsa on a graphical level. It's absolutely incredible looking, man. So in order to show off this next thing, I'm actually going to have to be finishing a race, which is why I'm doing a really short race on a small track with 1 lap. And unfortunately, this is not something you will find in my mod list, because this is not an official mod just yet. The mod author still wants to work on this, but as soon as it's officially out, you will definitely find it there. So if you're watching this video sometime in the future, good chances are that it's in there. And what this is as soon as we finish the race, you'll find out that an autopilot kicks in and a replay will start automatically here. So it didn't work as smoothly now. I think it's because all of the cars just finished at once. But yeah, basically how it is a more proper way to finish these races, which it was like a small pet peeve of mine that I always had with Assetto Corsa. Usually how it works is as soon as you cross the finish line, you still control the car for like 3 to 5 seconds. You get teleported to the pits, and then from there you have to manually end the race, and you never see the replay. The way it works in like a Gran Turismo or Forza is, as soon as you cross the finish line, the replay camera starts to, or it's just kind of switch to replay camera, or it starts to show the replay of the race right away, which is exactly what this does. Which I actually really like, because that way, when the replay just starts automatically, you're more likely to watch the replay instead of, you know, having to start it manually, as well as just the race just ending more smoothly when you cross the finish line. You know, once again, like the autopilot kicks in, it blurs out the game for a moment and switches to the race replay, which feels so much nicer and more official than how it works in the regular game. Now you're still gonna have to like exit the menu, the replay here, and then exit manually, but it's definitely a lot better. And yeah, once again, it's just a small minor thing that just makes the game feel so much more official. And as I promised earlier, I did want to show some of the new tracks that I added, and a few of them I actually cannot believe actually made it into Assetto Corsa. So the first one we have is the Gran Turismo 7 version of Grand Valley. So we have the regular Grand Valley in the game already. This is, I think, probably taken from Gran Turismo 5 or 6. But we now also have the Gran Turismo 7 version, which honestly looks really legit in the game. It looks insane, like stupid good. Generally speaking, I like the older version of Grand Valley, but it's nice to just kind of have both. One thing that I also like in particular about Assetto Corsa is that people come out and make their own fictional tracks that you actually cannot experience anywhere else. So it's always nice to have like tracks from Forza and Gran Turismo and Project Cars and whatnot. But I think it's even cooler to drive on tracks that people made entirely by themselves for Assetto Corsa. And one of these is Rusty Valley Raceway, which unfortunately doesn't have any screenshots attached to it, but is actually like really fun to drive on. And lastly, we also have the special stage Route X, which I think is also kind of nice to have. I'm not sure if this one has not appeared in a race yet for me. Quite sure I'll probably damn this road to hell, well, damn this track to hell when it does appear. But yeah, once again, nice track to have. It's especially nice for like top speed testing. But that was kind of like the main stuff that I added over the last couple of months. Admittedly, it's nothing like insanely massive. Like, I didn't add like hundreds of cars, but once again, I feel like at this point, I don't need to. I feel like I have everything that I kind of wanted in this install. It's kind of like as pretty much as close to as good as it can get realistically. There are other small things that I added that I didn't like really bring up in the video so far because it's hard to show off. So for example, there is a plugin for an automatic gearbox because the original vanilla game's automatic gearbox is quite bad, and at times there were issues where some cars would not automatically shift up. There's now a plugin that basically takes over the automatic gearbox and just kind of makes everything work. All of the kind of like issues you had with the vanilla automatic gearbox have basically all been fixed with it. I also added an extra app that allows you to adjust the volume of the cars on a per car basis. So the problem that I ran into a lot when, you know, just kind of like downloading a bunch of car mods is that several different cars will have completely different audio levels. So occasionally I'll run into cars that are barely audible, where you can not even hear the engine audio in the exterior cam at least. And then other times, and this is actually more often the case, the cars are just way too loud. Like way too loud. And there's basically an app that allows you to just kind of like change the volume of like each of the individual cars and have that saved, so you don't have to like change the volume every single time. Which I think is, once again, like just more of a bug fix, more of a quality of life improvement, so I didn't really show it off in the video. But yeah, that does cover about everything. As I said, you can find all of the links in the description below. I have my mod list all down there. And yeah, I'm not sure how much more I'm gonna keep working on this. I think at some point I'm probably gonna get a little bit bored of Assetto Corsa again. It's kind of inevitable. I think at the moment I'm still waiting for the next Evoluzione update to drop. And maybe I'll dabble a little bit into Assetto Corsa universe as well. We'll see. Still, I'm really amazed what you can do with Assetto Corsa, and if you have any suggestions for mods I can add to the game, let me know in the comments. Just tell me about your favorite apps, your favorite car mods, track mods, like just anything. I'm always open to suggestions, and I always want to learn more about what kind of like mods are out there for Assetto Corsa, or just generally improvements you can do in Content Manager. So if you have any info, if you have any input, feel free to leave it in the comments below. And yeah, with that, I'm out for today. Thank you guys for watching once again. Take care, take it easy, and as always, peace. See you guys.